The chordophones. Chordophones are anything that use strings to make a sound. Hence the name chord is in a piece of string. At least that's a good way to help you remember. Now, in order to build a chordophone at home, I'm going to show you a couple different ways. And each uses some things that you have lying around the house. First one is very basic, and you probably have made it in elementary school already. We're going to make a basic guitar of sorts out of a tissue box. So we have, to begin with, an empty Kleenex box and some rubber bands. And a third component that maybe you have not seen before, using a ruler. Now, many chordophones, because the string itself is what makes the sound, what vibrates, they are very quiet. The rubber band, if I pluck it, you can probably hear a little bit of it. But it needs something to resonate. It needs a chamber to echo into. Now, this is why guitars have the big body with the hole, or the string instruments in the orchestra have the body behind it with the F-shaped holes that are on each side of the bridge. It needs a big echo chamber. And you can tell that it actually does help the sound to bounce around inside and amplify it a little bit before it bounces out. Listen quickly. I'm just going to continue talking, but without changing my voice's volume, just by putting the box up next to my mouth, you can hear, if you listen closely, it sounds slightly louder. Again, I did not increase the volume of my voice, I just put the box next to my mouth and spoke into it. The volume is the same, yet it sounds louder echoing here. The same thing would happen if you actually were to speak into a center hole in a guitar or a ukulele, or if you were to speak into the F holes on a classical music instrument like a violin or a cello or a double bass. Now I'm going to show you this does in fact amplify the sound. Remember how quiet it was when I first plucked it? Stretching it over the box now and plucking it, you can hear the sound echoes a little bit more. Part of that is a percussive sound that you're getting from snapping it, though. We just want the plucking sound. This is why the ruler comes into play. The ruler is going to be like our bridge. I slide it underneath the rubber band, turn it up on edge, and just like a bridge on a classical string instrument, just like a bridge on a violin or a viola or a cello, you now have a tight portion, when it doesn't snap down on you, a tight portion that you can pluck and hear and allow it to echo. Now, the fun thing about having a whole bag of rubber bands, other than having the fun colors, you can experiment with things of different thickness. The thickness of the string, as well as the length of the string, will affect the way a chordophone sounds. Just like with the physics of any other sound, the bigger the instrument, the louder it will be, or not the louder, I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. The bigger the instrument, the lower the sound. The thicker the chord, the lower the sound will be. You can see this rubber band is about twice as thick as the other ones. I'm going to slip it on there and maybe pick one more. Aha, this green one is a very thick one as well. See if I can get it to stretch enough to go over the box. If not, I'll try to shoot my eye out. Yeah, make it the Christmas story. You'll shoot your eye out, kid! Aha! It looks like it'll go. Maybe. So I have 4 different strings, different lengths, different colors, different thicknesses. I can turn my bridge on end, and we will you can hear all of them are different. You can experiment with how far you turn the bridge and how tight you make things. Notice the tighter it goes, the higher it goes too. That's how a string instrument is actually tuned. When you turn those little pegs on the instrument, that's what it's doing. It's making the string a little bit tighter, and by making the string tighter, a little bit more taut, the sound will be higher. So you can experiment with a number of different thicknesses of rubber band and with playing with the ruler as the bridge for one way to play around with the basic physics of a chordophone. Now, if you want to try to make a more sophisticated chordophone on your own, you're more than welcome to do so. There are plans online in several different places, both in printouts and on YouTube, that you can find detailed plans for how to build a homemade guitar using materials, nuts and bolts, wood, fishing line, being able to actually do the fine tuning with the pegs. But to make something that looks a little bit more like a traditional chordophone and tests the same principles, I'm going to show you something that you can do more quickly, more easily, and with things that you probably already have on hand. First, some craft sticks or popsicle sticks, which hopefully won't explode on you like mine just did. But you will need to take maybe about 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to say 5 of them. And I'll put the rest of the pile over here to organize later. But you'll need those 5 craft sticks. You'll need some duct tape. You will need, once again, some rubber bands, various sizes and thicknesses. And finally, you're going to do a little bit of recycling here. You need an empty pudding cup. Empty pudding cup or Jello cup or whatever. I had a little bit of chocolate pudding a little bit earlier today to treat myself. So that ends up being something that we're going to use as our resonator back. And what we're going to end up with is going to actually look a little bit like the traditional banjo. Okay? So pay attention closely, step by step. Now, off screen, I took a moment to take some of the duct tape and take 4 of those sticks and join them together, wrapping them around both sides so they make kind of a solid plank. Now, the reason I chose 4, I took my pudding cup and noticed that when I went to the back of it, 4 across would be about as far as it would go. Okay? If you have a little bit larger cup, you may add more. If you have smaller, use less. Just adjust according to the size. Okay? Now, once we have that in place, we want to take an additional piece of duct tape, set this against the back, and we're going to tape this in place. Now, you may actually choose to glue it on with some hot glue as well, but I think that for our purposes for the experiment of making an instrument, the tape works just well enough. This isn't something that you're planning on playing forever. This is something that you're using to kind of figure out exactly how things work when you put an instrument together and why it makes sound in a particular way. I'm going to take an extra piece and just to make sure that it does stay in place, I'm going to reinforce it, putting a little bit more on the bottom. Taking the time to carefully wrap it around. That way you notice it's fairly firm. Now, this is going to turn out looking a little bit like a banjo. A banjo would have a drum head on the front, so why wouldn't we go with putting it the other direction? Well, because I want to make sure that there's a little bit of a place for the sound to echo here. Now that we have our basic framework, we have the body where the sound would resonate. We have the neck, the portion where the strings would be stretched. In this case, the body also doubles as a little bit of a bridge keeping things up. Now we take individual rubber bands and stretch them forward. Now notice I left a little space here at the top. That's because I want the rubber bands to be able to fasten themselves into place. Okay? They will be kind of stuck there in between. See if you can find things that are different size rubber bands and different thicknesses to see how far you stretch them and how the sounds are different for each one. Again, this is going to be similar to what we did with the tissue box. It's just going to be on a different scale, and you'll get to experiment with seeing how the physics work in a different way. I'm going to grab another, let's see. Here's a nice red one that was a larger one. So I have a red, a green, and a blue. They were all different thicknesses, different lengths. Whoops, snapped back on me. And it's just enough to be able to hold it in place over top of everything. Now let's see. If I play it, hear how it's echoing back and out. Wow, actually that wasn't intentional. But those two are almost actually tuned to open fifths. So that one actually has some harmony to it. But you could switch out different rubber bands, put them in at different angles, and even if you wanted to, similar to what we did with the other one, if you wanted to add an extra bridge across, you can stick another craft stick in, another toothpick, all right, not toothpick, another popsicle stick, and you can adjust where it is to be able to adjust the tension on the strings and change their sound. Hopefully, you guys have a little bit of fun experimenting with what you can do to make rubber band instruments to understand the basic physics behind the sound for the chordophones, the strings vibrating to make sounds in an instrument.